So yesterday was all about, if I asked you the question, starting tomorrow to double your prices, what physical, emotional, psychological reaction would you have if I, as your coach, said, do that now? You've just doubled your income. Well, I will say 99.99% of you would throw up your arms and give me some excuse as, oh my gosh, my clients won't pay that. I won't have any clients. I don't know if I can ask for that kind of money. All the pieces that come up around pricing, which is really never around pricing, is it? It's mostly around how we are attuned to money and pricing around culturally in our families, the experiences we've had as a new business owner, or just any experience that gave you some trauma around money and pricing. I mean, that's just what it is. And the thing I said first yesterday, and I'm going to say it every single day, and it's what I've known forever with the background that I have, but what we've seen in the last 18 months with our clients is business problems are really personal growth issues masquerading as business problems. And so when my clients work with me and my audience participates or looks at a lot of my postings, what you see is not only the psychology and the neuroscience, but of course the strategy and positioning, because to me, they go together. And, I even had my own experience when I started this business in the middle of a divorce after 30 years of marriage that, in hindsight, of course, I saw coming, but in that moment didn't see coming, and decided to start this business at the same time. So my personal growth was stunted, and my business was a little stunted. They go together. And I know a lot of people talk about mindset, and I am a fan, of course, mindset, but it's not the language I use because the way I've been trained. So I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years. For those of you who didn't hear this yesterday, I'll just do a quick recap. But I also am a professional psychotherapist. I had a private practice with psychotherapy and consulting to major companies, their employees, but also their management for difficult leaders. And so it's always a combination. It's never just about tips and techniques. And because that's the quickest thing to learn, because intellectually that is easier, but it's really our feelings that dictate our behavior. It is not our intellect that dictates our behavior. And when it comes to money, pricing, sales, anything around that, culturally, we all have different cultures and how we view money, and it's generational, and it's your experiences, like I said. So we start from that position. And so it's the reason I just can't give you one little tip, and that's going to make the whole difference in the world, because money is so emotional. I even read a book a couple weeks ago from a guy that was in the finance world and had been a financial planner, and also is now writing. And he actually echoed a lot of the words that I said, is that money is emotional, and you can't underestimate your family history around the emotions around money. And that is what we talked about yesterday, and that it will continue today. So remember, as we go through this, the idea is that we're going to go through a framework that kind of points out all of the areas where you can see not only the psychology, the neuroscience, the mindset, but the positioning and strategy. And since money, pricing, and sales is just like the number one red flag for most entrepreneurs, we're going to use that framework to talk about how it affects your pricing. So most people want to double, triple, they really want revenue from their business that allows them to live the lifestyle they want to live. Not everyone wants a $10 billion company, but most people want to know they can buy something whether it's for their business or their personal life, from their business, and they don't have to think twice about it. They want to take care of all their expenses. If they have a team, they want to be able to do that. And they want to be a profit center, that they're making profit. And when we don't think about our pricing from both positions, what happens is, even if you're successful at growing your business to the revenue that you want, you end up having very little profit. So one of the areas that I've worked in the past is helping high-end folks in their back of the room sales, whether it was in person with their events or the strategy around how they were going to do that. And then, of course, when we came on virtually, we've done that virtually. And there's so many of them, when they don't take in both the strategy and the positioning and what is even the psychological framework around their own audience and the type of target clients that they have, they miss the boat and they don't have as much profit. Those folks that really attune to the type of clients that do well with them and their audience and their social media presence are psychologically understanding the internal motivation for someone to buy from you. And then plus the positioning and strategy, those folks make a lot of profit. So I've seen it go both ways. It is fascinating to see it in the back of the room. And it's fascinating to see what you see on the outside is not necessarily what's going on in the back end, right? We always suspect that. And so for the last 6 or 7 years since I've done that for folks as part of one of my income streams, is that it's been an eye awakening in how to think about all the experiences and the skills and the strategy that I've used and how to really merge that extremely well when it comes to pricing, money, and sales in someone's business. So let's talk a little bit about the framework with the lens of pricing today. So, like I said, lots of folks, lots of business folks want to make money. Doesn't mean it has to be $1 billion business, but but you really want to be able to say, oh, I want to join that $25,000 mastermind and I don't have to sweat about it. Oh, I want to be able, like for me, what's important, my son just got married. I want to contribute when grandkids come to their education. That's important to me. I don't want to blink an eye and say, I can never do that. We all have these internal pieces that get reflected in our business strategy and our pricing. And so when I'm talking about this, I want you to kind of lean in to your own internal motivators for being here or for listening to the replay. And then also for those of you, I'm not forgetting you on Instagram, is to also have the lens of who your target audience is and what may be their internal motivators are to choose you and not blink an eye at the pricing you have. That does happen. And there's a lot of components about your business and you that make the difference for someone to choose you. And so the first thing you have to decide is decide that you're going to evaluate your pricing. You're going to look at every offering that you have. You're going to look at that pricing and you're going to ask yourself this question: do I feel like I'm giving away the store, or I am, for what I do for my folks, do I feel like I'm not being paid to the extent I should be paid? And also with my current clients, do I have money problems where people pay me and then don't pay me or drop out? Those all work in the same arenas. And so the decision is to look at it through the lens from a psychological viewpoint for yourself and your clients and your potential clients all at the same time as we go through this. And you might want to have like 3 columns. And when things come up, just, I've got myself, I've got my current clients and my potential clients and audience. Where may they fall into some of the things I'm talking about? And I think when we're done here, it'd be something to really think about and have some thinking time, which I think is always important in a business. And so decide that you're going to look at it. decide what your current clients are paying you, what your audience you think would be willing to pay you. A lot of times, here's the first objection I get. Oh, my clients are going to drop me. Oh, I can't, oh my goodness, no one's going to pay me that. So if that's coming up for you, put it in one of those columns. That's kind of more of a you thing than sometimes the current clients. Okay. And then the pricing versus the alignment of what kind of business you want. Are you not really in alignment with what your gifts and skills are? Are you just doing something to make money? And I bring this up because I've had my own experience with that. It's not that you're not doing a good job, because, towards the end of my divorce, what happened was I had to get my own money quickly. I decided I was going to keep my home. So that meant I was taking on the mortgage and all the other expenses with the house, where before we had shared finances, now it was just me. And so the first thing I did was, how can I make the most money fast? Now, I was in a crunch, I had urgency, and I did offer some programs that were really good, but they weren't quite in total alignment for myself. And I knew that, not then, because, I don't know if you know this, and I'm sure some of you do, with any surprise or trauma or anything you go through in your life, you're going through it on the worst days of your life, and you still have to be your best in so many moments. And so it's the both and position. And so as business owners, we have to kind of do the same thing. Maybe we're not traumatized as someone would have be attacked or anything, but we're traumatized if the bank account is not showing enough money to pay our expenses, and it month after month, and we're really struggling. That's a money trauma that a lot of business owners go through, and it can affect them getting out of that that circle of inconsistent income, because they're so traumatized about never making any money or not making as much money, or their pricing isn't right. So the alignment piece is important. Now, I will tell you, with my clients, from the beginning, I want to make sure that they're bringing in income. So there's no delay around income, because why would I do that to somebody? Why, you're here to make money. It's not the only thing. I always tell folks, money isn't everything, but money happens to touch everything in your business. So we have to pay attention to it. Most of us start a business because we want our freedom. We want our time freedom. We want our money freedom. We want our lifestyle freedom, and we want to work when we want to work. I mean, there is that's what it is. Some people just want a part-time business, and it doesn't matter. All these issues come up around pricing. So if you're not new, the alignment piece becomes more important. If you're not making money, or you're just starting out, the first thing is that we concentrate on is making you guys money, because you've got to survive long enough to get into the kind of money you want, so you can really serve a larger population, and you can really be out there and making a difference. A lot of people talk about that, and sometimes when I read it, it sounds so fairy tale, some of the quotes, but as a psychotherapist for 25 years, 20 years, almost in business, 26, 27 years, is people never came to me because they wanted to buy more things or do more stuff. Most women, especially some men, most women regretted not standing into who they really were. And so a business provides that for us. But now you've got the opportunity to be in your full genius, your full gift. And so the longer you're in business, the alignment piece becomes important. And then the question that I mentioned earlier, who do you need to be to double your prices? Let's just play with that the whole week, because it's really, even if you don't double, but you increase, we want to use that to ignite us, to really show where our fear is, to really point out what the objections are for ourselves. And then, of course, the objections from our clients and then our audience and potential clients. So who do you need to be right now to double your prices? Now, that's not a question maybe you can answer right now. You might need to journal around that. You might need to think about it, but really put some time into that question. I think when we really spend a little bit of time of thinking about that question, we really come to some conclusions we hadn't thought about. I know that's been my experience when the internal reflects the external, and that's when the alignment really shows up, right? And then the other question to really ponder is, what does your business need to be for your clients to choose you at the pricing that you bring value to the table? That is really the question all week. What does your business need to be? Because if you're in alignment on who you need to be, then you've got to look at your business and what does your business need to be for your folks to say yes right away. Because if they're not saying yes, something's out of whack. And so we go back to business problems are usually personal growth problems, at least 80% of the time. That has been my experience. It was as a therapist. And when I transferred all of that here in the last nearly 10 years, what has happened is the more we did the internal work, the faster my folks grew in their revenue. And last year, every single one of them put in an additional $75,000 to $100,000. Now, they weren't new business owners, but they were folks that were, never getting past quite 100,000 or just going past 100, coming back down, doing that seesaw thing. And the more we looked at it, and the internal piece, and then drove that together, that's when they made huge, huge leaps. And so proud of all of them. But it really goes to these two questions. If you want to do that, who do you have to be? And of course, it's in alignment. I don't want you to be anyone you're not supposed to be. But most people, after being that therapist for 20 years, regret not standing in who they wanted to be and did the things they wanted to do. They're, showed their skills and their gifts out there. And then men had the same thing, but also men regretted not spending as much time with their family. And women, spent usually, and I know it can sound like I'm being a little genderized here, but the bottom line is it's the truth. It's 20 years of research of being there that women are not standing up into who they need to be. And if you're in a business, you've decided to open a business, you've just told your business that's really what you want to do. So you can't hold back on anything. It's not a pretty journey. I can tell you from my personal journey sometimes, and it's not for my clients. There are days I've had my clients say to me, I love you, but today I can't stand you, because it does take some internal strength and resilience to break through to that level where you're in total alignment and money becomes easy, because people see you as the solution, as the problem solver. And we hear that a lot out from business coaches, and it's true, but you don't become the ultimate result provider, problem solver, until you can solve your own internal struggle around your business. And it's why, again, I repeat myself, but it is my message moving forward for the last 18 months. It's got to be done together. It just cannot be done separately. And it's the only way to get it done fast and as quickly as possible. So those two questions are important. The other thing around pricing that people really struggle with in this framework is, whoops, I almost knocked my computer off, is what is the value that your offer brings to the table? We hear this all the time. And when I first started going to these business events when they were live, or I joined a mastermind, we'd have a 2-day in person someplace. And I got to meet a lot of other business owners, and I still have friends from some of them from 10 years ago, which is really fantastic. But it's like, how is she making money and we're not? Well, we're better than her. I mean, or better than him. I mean, you heard it all the time. People couldn't get it. So there are two things. One is confidence and be able to ask for business in such a way that aligns with you, aligns with your offer, aligns with who you need to be, and aligns with what your business it needs to do for them to choose you. All of those pieces, even if that person in your mind did not have as much skill or experience you could bring to the table, they were confident enough on their results and knew who they were enough that they could ask for business, and people trusted them, so they pulled their credit card out. That is the difference. And so you can have, like, and I alluded to this before, you can have all the skill. I can teach you all about money intellectually. I can teach you all about scaling and business growth. I can teach you how to write a book. I can teach you all kinds of things, but that's an intellectual process. And intellectually, I love reading. I love my mind, my brain. So I'm not dissing it. What I'm saying is, it is the emotional component of what you're thinking about up here that drives you to do something different or keeps you in the same stuckness. And so when you are realizing that, you have to really dig deep on what your pricing, your feelings are around your pricing, about money, about asking for business, because it all comes up and it has to be managed. Most of the time, we don't cure anything. Even when I had my private practice and I was seeing couples and individuals and from a wide range of industry in my area, the bottom line was that what got done was what the emotional component drove. And it's the same thing with business owners. There's no such thing as objectivity. We all have a lens that we look everything through. And so we have to look at that lens and see if it's real when it comes to our pricing. No one will buy from me if I raise double my prices. Well, how do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that? Now, if that's from your fear, you're absolutely right. If you say, okay, Lorianne, I am going to double my prices, and tomorrow I'm going to have a sales call, or I'm going to message somebody, and I am going to ask for double my pricing, and I just know this person is going to take it. But you've done nothing about your fear. All you've done is shove it down, and it still lurks, and fear is a strong emotion. And so how it comes out when you're asking for that, the confidence isn't there as much. You may think you're confident, but that other person is hearing your energy around your confidence. And what happens is they are like, I don't know. I mean, I like her. I like him. I think the offer's good, but there's just not something right. They can't pinpoint it. And it is a direct result of out of alignment because your fear is still running the show. And it's just the way it is. So one of the things we do before I have people raise their prices or start a new program or even double, because I think it's really important. Some people absolutely need to double their pricing, is that we've got to look at that, where that comes from. And we have a proprietary system that we take people through, so it doesn't have to linger forever, because that's one of the big complaints I even had as a therapist. Why does it take so long for people to be able to make change? And change can occur, but change is really about management and how you can manage whatever comes up from you in a second or two, because you've got some great ways of doing it. And then your energy and your confidence is in alignment. They still may not buy, but they're more intrigued and they believe you. And that's what's key. You know, when someone is looking at you, and let's say you're on Zoom, or even if you're having an opportunity to be in person, I know some of that's going on right now, and you're giving your message, or you're talking to someone, and of course they're going to ask you what you do. And so some of your wording comes in. And if they're kind of shifting their eyes or
their leg, or they're not paying attention on Zoom or on, whatever kind of communication tool you're using, your message isn't landing. And so your pricing actually directs your messaging also. So that's another thing we'll talk about here in a few minutes. So what's the value you bring to the table in your offer? So the other thing I want to say about that is a lot of times people don't know what value really means. And value means two things to me. Value means the results you get for your people and the trust factor, because nowadays that's been eroded in our society. It's been eroded even in our business environment, because everything seeps in. Even if you want to keep politics out of it, the osmosis of the arguing and what's going on, it just comes into our society. We can't put this huge shield up. We can protect ourselves from certain things, and hopefully you're doing that so you can be as positive as possible and still deal with these things in your business. But the bottom line is trust has been eroded across the board. It was even 10 years ago. It is just worse today. And for all the reasons, whatever your positioning is out in the world, for all the reasons we could talk about, and it's really not worth talking about to me, but just know what the result is for you and the people you are talking to, because that's the issue. The trust factor has been eroded. So if you're kind of following along here, what we're really talking about is in the last 10 years where trust has eroded, the thing that has increased, more and more people are buying from emotion and then justifying with logic. That is something that's been written about for the last 20 years, that people buy on emotion, and they do. But in this arena of uncertainty and lack of trust, emotion has become even more prominent in why people buy from you. And so for you to be able to convey trust in someone that's not your client yet, so they feel not only are you going to get them the results, but you have their back. When they struggle, you're going to be there for them. When within reason, you're going to answer their email. You're going to go the extra mile because they paid you. And especially if they paid you a lot of money, the more technology we use, and this is a little side note, the more human interaction we need. So even though we're on Zoom today and I'm on Instagram, I still have to be interacting with people. This has more impact than an email. Now, I love to read, but not everyone learns through reading. So video is important. Having a social media presence is important. But what you're conveying all the time, no matter where you're showing up, is can you get results? And can people trust you? And the only way to convey that is through your messaging. And always use emotional language first. Now, I do not mean a gentleman at one time, he was my client. He goes, well, I'm not going to cry for anybody. He said, I'm not talking about crying or getting angry. I'm talking about the type of language you use that inspires people, not the rah, rah, here we go. Because people are, some people like that, but people are putting their hard-earned money down to get results from you, but they want to know that you're a trustworthy person, and you can only convey that through your language first as you get to meet them and you start talking to them and they're making a decision around whether they want to work with you and take out their credit card. And then it also shows up in your actions, your follow through, and especially when they come as a client, that you know how to impart that all the time. Because the nice result of being able to do that, especially once they become clients, is clients stay with you longer. That is, I didn't realize that was something I did in my private practice years ago that I took with me in this business, because I had clients, I had generational clients. I had people that started with me, sent me their kids, sent me their spouses, sent me aunts and uncles, their parents, and I had the relational piece down, and that comes with us too. So it's the trust and the relational piece. Woo! My tongue got tied there for a second. And because we're relational beings, we cannot learn, we cannot grow, we cannot change without being in this social relational environment in a trustworthy container. And that's really how people buy from you, and you can double your prices if they know that about you and they want to work with you. A little side story. Several years ago, when we were still meeting in person, I was at a conference, and I actually had like a 10-minute conversation with someone that was thinking about working with me. And I said something about her business, and she said no. So that's, of course, we're going to get some no's. Didn't think anything about it. 2 years later, see her at the same conference. She comes running up to me. She's waving her credit card at me. I wish I was exaggerating, but I'm not. And she goes, Lorianne, do you remember me? And I didn't at first. So I'm going to be real honest. I didn't. She goes, you were right. She goes, I didn't do what you said. For 2 years, my business actually has gotten worse. Here's my credit card. And she was a client for 2.5 years. And so my point is, even when you're speaking to someone that could potentially be a client, or just a sidebar somewhere where you're networking or something, you never know how your words impact and how they provide trust, and what you say gets played out in their business. And now they have to admit it. They may not come back to you to get help, but the thing I know, conversations make a difference. And so you always have to convey that type of language, that you are trustworthy, you have their back. If there's a glitch, you're going to be there for them instead of getting a computerized email. So the higher the number of your pricing, the more that has to happen. It's in direct correlation. All right, so we've talked about deciding, we've talked about how that feels to double your prices for yourself, for your current clients, for your audience, pricing versus alignment. Who do you need to be? What does your business need to do and be for someone to choose you easily? Not a difficult thing, easily. Then when you speak, that your offer has value, and that is the results and the emotional component and trust, right? So when you're sending emails, you're posting on social media. So I want you to really think about your messaging and making sure you are talking about things that do convey trust, even if it's only a few words in your post that has nothing. You don't have to be talking as trust as a subject matter, but it's implied in what you're doing. Because again, social media has changed too. It's inundated. How do you have your voice out there? So the few people with the algorithms, I never understand. So I'm not a social media expert, but I do put myself out there. And so I always want to make sure that my language in some way can evoke some emotion, can evoke trust, can evoke value, even if it's just 3 words out of a whole sentence. To me, I know that's what my messaging is. And when you're doubling your prices, your messaging changes. So that's one other thing I want to talk about, is your messaging changes because you've changed. If you've made these changes, you're managing any fear that comes up about doubling your prices. You have, you're really looking at it, you know how to get out of it really quickly, or whatever the issue is. If it's not fear, you may not trust yourself. So here, that's another thing I want to talk about, is a lot of times people say no to you, not because of you, because they don't trust themselves to get the work done. Or they don't trust themselves, like in my case, that they're going to do the work that I'm going to ask them so they can double and triple their revenue. And so that happens to all of us as business owners, whatever our offer is, because people want a lot, but most people, we talk about that. You see it all over the social media, the comfort zone. Well, it's because we don't like to change as human beings. Our brain, actually our conscious brain, which is only about 10% of everything out there, really likes familiarity. And what it does when a new situation comes up, it works backwards without getting into all the scientific stuff. It works backwards to find something similar so we can bring it forward and know what's comfortable and predictable for our brains. And that's what we're fighting all the time when we want to make change. And because it's not an easy path, there will be challenging days, but I will guarantee you, if you are able to do this work around your pricing and your money and your business, your life will be so much easier. It will be a delight to come to work every day. I'm not promising $1 million, but I am promising ease and knowing you can make a great living with profit in your business. That's what I'm saying when people do this work. And all of my clients in the last 18 months, like I've said, they've done tremendously. So remember that sometimes people don't trust themselves, and it's okay to ask that question. I am okay with your ability to ask almost any question when you're speaking to someone or texting with someone or DMing, however, which way you make offers to your folks or in a live, to even ask the question, is it you don't have enough information about me to make this decision, or you don't have enough information about yourself and you don't trust that you can get the work done? It is okay, because what happens, it opens up a whole different conversation. And to me, money, pricing, sales is all about conversation, relational conversation. Because if you've got some fear around doubling your prices starting in 24 hours, can you imagine other people have the same thing, carry some version of that with them, because we attract kind of some of the same people. That's kind of another thing. Our invisible radar, the type of clients we usually get are folks that are a few years or a few steps, or however you want to say that, behind us, because we've worked through with our knowledge, our experiences, and what we've done and what we've learned, our skills, our gifts, that you get to teach that so you can bring them forward. Well, that's what happens. So most of the time, your audience and your potential clients, they have some of those same things that you struggled with in the past. So you really know, even though some of you tell me, no, you don't, you really do know what it is that you have to say and be able to do, and the kind of results to give folks. You really do know what will make them say yes. It's just you're afraid to bring that out. Sometimes we're afraid it sounds too much or we're too much. This is another thing around pricing that happens when I ask, okay, let's double your pricing starting tomorrow. And it's always an exercise I use because I know I'm going to get a good reaction, and I need that reaction to do the other work that we do to make sure you get past that. And so when that's happening, I actually say to my clients, okay, this is how your client feels in the moment you're in a conversation about asking for business. So what would you need to hear at that fearful level, or whatever objection you have just brought up, because that person has it a few steps back from you? What would you have needed to hear back then for you to say yes? All right. So that's what's really important. So that helps with, sometimes some storytelling in there is a great way to be able to bring in some trust and show results. And that's really important. So the last framework is all about confidence. If you can double your prices immediately, once you do this type of work, sometimes confidence is not still there. It's better. But what I've seen with any kind of situation, whether I was in my practice or working with these large corporations or now, is that confidence really has many legs to it. And so it could be, you could get to the point in dealing with your money, your revenue, your sales, your pricing, and have a lot of confidence there. But in a conversation, maybe visibility is an issue when we don't know. And so your confidence isn't as strong as it needs to be. So confidence has a lot of legs to it. And so because of that, we always look at it all the time, because it may bring in some other pieces that are affecting your ability to ask for the right kind of money to your offer. to start making sense? I hope this is all making sense. So let's talk about a couple people that I've had, some success stories that I've had over the years, but these last three that of my private clients were, again, just not in alignment with their business was the first thing. Neither one, not three of them. And so the pricing, so that was the other thing, the pricing, it was difficult to bring clients. They were bringing on clients. So the first thing we did was using this proprietary system was to really hone in on what was standing in the way of them being in alignment with their business. And then we honed in on the pricing. So it's important, if the alignment isn't there, like I said earlier, to hone that in first. And here's what I'll say about that. How you do that is you just have to have a lot of conversations. You will be able to get better. You'll be able to take some of the things I've said today. Maybe there are only 2 or 3 out of the 10 I've talked about so far, that you just need to pay attention to. And you need to do a little bit of soul searching. Incorporate some of that in your messaging when you're talking to folks, even if you're just networking, because if people say to you, tell me more, what's happening? Alignment showing up, they're curious. You want to be curious about them when that happens. Curiosity, creativity, conversations, they all work together, and then they lead to a pricing conversation. So the pricing piece is kind of the middle of it. The getting to know relational piece is up front. And most of us do a really good job of that because we have friends and family that we tend to get along with. Even if we have a few we don't, we know how to be relational. We know how to get to know somebody, most of us. Not everyone, because I've had some clients that don't know how to do that well, but most of us do. But where we get stuck is when we move to finding out the information that we need about that person, about their business, and then bringing in the results you can get for them, and then talking about what that's going to cost, what the pricing is, and how to close business. So that's the linear kind of way of thinking about it. Some of the tactic piece that you have to start thinking about, but this comes first. You must figure some of these pieces out. And my suggestion is, from everything I've talked about, is to pick 2 or 3 and work on them. You'll get the recording. You can come back after you've done 1 or 2 and really see if it's resonating in your messaging, or, test it out in an email, test it out in a social media post on Facebook, Instagram, wherever, LinkedIn, wherever you're at, and start seeing what people comment on or get more likes or hearts or whatever. I mean, the world talks back to you, your business talks back to you, and it's important for you to pay attention. A lot of times people say, well, I only got 1 comment. I said, well, let's go look at the comment and let's see if it says anything to us. So it's important that you realize that everything I talk about over the next few days has a lot of nuances to it. And the nuances are becoming more and more important. We used to be able to get away in business, and I don't mean that in a negative way, where we could just put something out and people would buy. And then the funnels came along and people bought through funnels. And then the pandemic hit. And uncertainty came about, and people didn't know what to do. And what's happened is that people are drifting more, and they need the mental health issue. And if you don't have any mental health issues, we're still getting some of that through osmosis. So it's happening. The nuances of how you speak, how you deliver, how your messaging is becomes so more important. And it reflects how you customize your conversations with folks, how they have a client journey with you up to being a client, and then throughout being a client. All the nuances are becoming so important. That's why the intellect is great. I love my brain, but the emotional, psychological, the heart piece comes in with the nuances, and being able to know, like I said, what you think your current clients are afraid of. If you said to them, let's double your prices, you might want to throw that at some of them. Even if you're not in the business building space, you might want to say some version of that would reflect your business, and see what the reaction is. And then they tell you, then now you know how to message. So that's really important. So that's what happened with all three of these clients. We had to do the alignment piece, then the pricing and the what the results were and what the value was, and then we had to go back to the messaging and change it over. But throughout that year process, almost every single conversation we had, we were always talking about them, not just the business, and things would come up. They'd have great success in a launch, let's say, or even they put out an offer or got a speaking gig at a big corporation. And then what would happen in their personal life? They'd have a setback. Why? Because change is hard. We want success, but we have to learn how to integrate success when we even talk about anything, let alone our pricing. And so we don't feel like it's too much for us. And then we have some negative thing happen in our family or someplace else in our health. They weren't huge things, but I was on top of that because I'd seen it for nearly 30 years now between this business and my psychotherapy business. And prior to that, I was a sales manager. So you get to see the human component, the human interactions that people have with life and their business and themselves and their family, because the personal is the professional, and the professional is the personal. And so even though people pay a lot of, they say yes to that, but then they'll come back and say, well, just tell me the tips and techniques. I can give it to you, but most likely 99% of you won't work for you. And that's why a lot of technique-driven programs don't necessarily work after you've established yourself, because the basics of business are still the same from 100 years ago. The basics are still there, but how the context of how we do business is different. And so that's what we adjust to.